How to actually color hair. Disclaimer: there are many different ways to color hair. This is just how I usually do it. I'm trying to portray a smooth and bling bling hair. Let's dive right into it. The software I'm using is Photoshop CC 2018. The main tools I'm using are the default brush for drawing and the smudge tool. The first step is to fill in the base color. There's really not much to talk about here, but it's usually the lighter color or the color you want to show the most. Personally, I tend to use color with higher saturation here, or else the entire head will be too dull. The second step is to decide the light source. This is just my own art style, not everyone does this, but I like to add a lighter color which is lighter than the base color on the top of the head to indicate the light source. I think it gives more dynamic to the color of the hair and it reminds me where does the light come from, so I can draw the shadow in the right direction. But remember, don't make this color too bright. It cannot be lighter than the highlight which we are going to add later. The third step is to draw the first shadow. When drawing shadows, always keep in mind how the hair grows from the hair wall. Follow the direction and roughly sketch the shadow. It doesn't have to be perfect right now, you can fix it later on. It is easier to do the biggest shadow first and then we draw the smaller details, because in this way you will know the direction of your shadow. And it's also more efficient. One point to note when drawing shadows is to choose color with a lower saturation. I used to choose color with a high saturation because I thought it would make my drawing look lively. But I later realized that using grayer color makes the drawing more realistic and it helps emphasize the base color instead of fighting with it. Now, I may get beaten up for this, but I think the multiply layer is kind of overrated. Hey, listen up. I always love to use multiply, but for shadow I think it's better to choose your own color instead of just adding a gray multiply layer. The reason is, it is easier to adjust the color, and you can have more fun and try coloring the shadow with different color. And then use the smudge tool to slightly smudge the edge of the shadow to give a smooth texture. Don't overdo it because the shadow always looks better when it's solid and firm enough. fourth step is the second shadow. It is a smaller shadow to modify the first shadow, so again, do not overdo it. Simple may not always be the best, but it's usually better. Now where do we add the second shadow? I usually add it in the back of the neck because the hair here are most covered up. And then I will add a little bit of the second shadow on the edge of the first shadow. Again, not everyone does this. This is just my art style. And I do it because it strengthens the smooth texture and it makes the lighter part stands out more. The fifth step is the third shadow. Don't overdo it, don't overdo it, don't overdo it. Only add a little bit in the darkest place. I either use a darker gray version of the base color or I will use a very dark purple. I think purple looks pretty good with red, pink, orange and yellow. So I add a darker shadow here because I want to enhance the sense of layer of the hair. So it will look more abundant and thicker. The sixth step is the bangs highlight. So I usually add a little bit of skin color onto the hair near the face area and I will smudge it. If the color is too bright, just lower the non-transparency. This color is to avoid the face being overshadowed by the hair, because the face is one of the most important part of your anime character. The seventh step, my favorite part, is to draw the highlight of the hair. This should be the brightest color of the entire head. Follow the light source and the curve of the head to roughly draw a white line to indicate the highlight. Now erase the white line and make it into small blocks. And then you slightly smudge the edge of it. Sometimes I add a new overlay layer on top of the highlight layer, and I will add some bright yellow along the edge. It emphasizes the highlight even more and makes the color more vibrant. But for this drawing I want to keep it more simple, so I didn't do so. Lower the non-transparency as you like. Now here I lower it to 74%, but sometimes I will lower it up to 50 or 40. Just follow your guts and yeah. The eighth step is multiply. Well, some minutes ago I just said multiply layer is overrated, but I have to admit that it is one of the best tools invented for digital drawing. I add a very light gray to make the light and shadow more apparent and solid. Since the light source is on the left side, I added multiply color on the right side, where less light are reached. The last step, my favorite part, is to add light blue to the shadows. If you have watched my old videos, you'll notice I always add light blue to shadows, because it creates a sense of air and space, but again, don't overdo it. Just a little bit, and then you smudge it. And yeah, that was how I color hair. The full drawing is too sensitive for YouTube, so check out my Twitter or Pixiv to see it. I hope it gives some insight on your journey on digital illustration. I read all the comments and I'm very happy to see some of you guys saying you want to see more art tutorials from me, as I think I'm very bad at explaining, so I'm very glad that my video actually helps. I'll see you in the next video.